So, today we're going to talk about this chapter on karma from Words of My Perfect Teacher, um, and look at some aspects of karma that Lama Lina really wants us to understand that that a lot of time we don't spend a lot of time thinking about these aspects. So first, I invite you to find your seat and settle into your seat, placing your attention on the base of the spine. Feel the base of your body melting down into your seat. And at the same time, your seat is rising up to meet you. And from this point, there is a line, a channel. It's your central channel. And so this channel extends all the way down through your seat, through the floor, down through the grass, through the dirt, through the foundation of your house, right? Passes through the basement, into the soil, through the bedrock, into the magma, all the way down to the center of the earth. Solid, rising up to meet you. And then this channel comes up and extends just in front of the spine. It's about the width of your thumb. And it rises up through the body, in front of the spine, up through the core, through the neck, through the head, up through the crown. And again, continues to extend past the crown. There's actually a chakra that's just above your crown chakra. And then continues extending through that, through the roof, through your ceiling, through the roof of your house, up into the sky, past the clouds, through the atmosphere, up into space. And here we are, suspended in this dance of form and emptiness. Matter and spaciousness. So as we take refuge, visualize your refuge, whether that be the traditional refuge tree, let's say Guru Rinpoche in the center, union with consort, with Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and lineage teachers around, yidams around, whether it just be Kunto Zangpo, Kunto Zangmo, your root guru, whatever represents that for you. It's in front, and you take refuge. Here, little bird. Sanje Chodong Gedong La Chapsu Chiwo. Lama Yedong Kanto La Chapsu Chiwo. Sa Lung Tigli La Chapsu Chiwo. Chuku Langku Troku La Chapsu Chiwo. Rang Sem Tong Sel Nyo La Chapsu Chiwo. You take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Take refuge in the teacher, the archetype, and the consort. I take refuge in the channels, the winds, and the heart drops. I take refuge in the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, emptiness, form, and the dance of the two. And ultimately, I take refuge in the true nature of my own mind, all pervasive. And then we can visualize all of these wisdom beings coming together, merging into central figure and as your root guru, right? This is symbolizing a being that points you towards the nature of your own mind, somebody that makes that connection for you. And this being comes to the crown of your head. And then through that central channel, we bring them in to the body, down into the heart. And you can envision a tiny guru in your heart. And the bodhicitta of the guru is what comes out from us. And with that bodhicitta, we invite all sentient beings into the practice with us. So we can feel ourselves surrounded by infinite sentient beings, all in here practicing with us. So, this chapter that we're working on today is about karma and kind of how it works. And so there are volumes upon volumes about the metaphysics of karma, which really just means action, right? So this is a study, a base of knowledge regarding, how do actions proliferate throughout space and time. And so there are certain categories of actions that generally have unpleasant effects, create digpa, create closedness, tightness, stress, make things uncomfortable. And there are categories of actions that generally produce gewa, openness, lightness, joy, right? And you can see it, experientially in your life, and it talks about some these categories of actions in the chapter. So like, when you look at the Noble Eightfold Path, these are guidelines of like, you should not lie. That generally creates digpa, to lie to others, to yourself, to make the action of creating an untruth, right? Creates instability in the environment. It creates gewa, stability, openness, to be honest and truthful. Same with killing, stealing, sexual activity without consent, right? These actions in general produce negative effects. Their opposites, will create positive effects. But we run into this very human problem of not knowing. We have a lot of ignorance, both of where our behaviors come from, that we're doing them, and then what the effects of those actions are. Just in general. Even the most very self-aware person can struggle with seeing, the proliferation of their own thoughts and actions. So there's a couple of quotes from Guru Rinpoche that I really like when it comes to talking about karma. And the first one I can say off the top of my head. The first one is that if you want to know your past lives and what you have been getting up to in your past, then all you have to do is look at your present circumstances. And that will give you the picture. And if you want to know your future lives and what will come in the future, then you take a look at your present actions. And that will determine what the future is like. And then he also says, actually, I'm going to read this whole quote. I don't know. There's a WhatsApp group that I'm part of, and the woman who runs it, Javaria, has posted this. So this is from Patrul Rinpoche. He says, never underestimate the long-term consequences of your actions, for as long as the mind has the obscuration of grasping at an inherently existing me, then there will be karma. No matter how far on the path one is, no matter how realized one is, no matter how many miraculous powers one has attained, for as long as there is even a subtle trace of this obscuration, the inherently existing me, then karma is there. And that is why Padmasambhava, an enlightened being not even affected by it, had skillfully told ordinary beings, my realization is higher than the sky, but my observance of karma is finer than grains of flour. So just giving up and saying karma is this thing that exists outside of me, it's a system that I can't control, karma is a bitch, blah, 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 right? Instead, we're being asked to observe it very carefully and observe our minds very carefully and really understand the cycles that we're involved in. And it requires, this is the theme for these teachings. It requires some really ruthless self-examination, to be very honest about yourself, about your mind, about your actions, and about the consequences of those actions. And so the first thing that I want to do today, Lama Lena really wants us to go further than the typical person when it comes to looking at our karma. And what I mean by that is that instead of just, it's easy to say, okay, I got angry and I said something that was mean, and then now my friend is not talking to me. And that's the action, and there's a result, and then to end it there. And to say, okay, well, that's as far as I need to go. That's where most people stop, right? But what Lama Lena wants us to do is to go on and look at the tertiary effects and what are the effects after that? And after that, and after that, beyond the immediate result, how does it continue to ripple through the world? Right? So for our first writing exercise, we're going to do that. And so I want to just take something that has happened this morning, something you did. It can be totally mundane. Okay? So for what I'm going to use is I had a thought, right? This is where all karmas begin, is forming conceptual thought. And so I had a thought, I was thirsty, and then that proliferated into wanting to take action. And then I decided to pour myself a glass of water and add Gatorade powder and make myself a drink, right? So that's a very mundane thing, a karma that I created, right? And so what I want to do is we're going to take 7 minutes. I want you to take your thing that happened this morning, and even if you feel like you have to make it up, but like really look at all of the effects, right? All of the thoughts that you had that came from that first original concept, the thoughts that you had that led to action. And from that action, not just in the immediate, I poured myself a glass of water and now I drank and now I'm not thirsty and that's the end. Right? Because what are the effects of pouring the glass of water? Where did that water come from? Where did the Gatorade come from? Where did my glass come from? What's going to happen after I drink this glass of water? How did drinking this affect my mood, and how does that change how I interact with people later on, right? Think about the effects of drinking this glass of water days from now. Like really, really draw it out, okay? And consider the ways that this one mundane action ripples out throughout your experience, not just in the moment, but tomorrow, next week. Go for like 10 years from now, if you can, right? Really stretch your imagination and stretch your attachment to a very simple cause and effect, right? So I'm gonna,
Sorry,
yeah,
Hailey,
yes,
can I ask, is the idea that we focus just on one, whatever it is, thought, action, and try to stretch it, or it can be a sequence of Digpa, Geva, different ones, or and do we also focus on Digpa ones or Geva ones, or either?
either. So start with one, see if you can locate something from today that was a thought that led to an action, right?
Hmm.
And if it comes out as it started a chain reaction and created more actions, then yes, explore that. If you find yourself branching off to like this action led to this action, in a different way, then and it's multiple things that came from that, then also good. But what I want you to do is explore this single thought, single action, and how it impacts and expands beyond the immediate result.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I will try.
However that comes out. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I see how my thoughts will wherever they will go, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the whole point is that we typically don't look at like, how is this glass of water gonna change things, way down the line. We just look at my thirst is quenched and we're good. So let's go beyond
Yeah.
that for this. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll set our timer. There it is. 7 minutes. Okay. All right, that's 7 minutes. Finish your thought. Personally, this one, once it started getting going, then 7 minutes was up. So would either of you like to share what you've got or your experience, thoughts from this?
Yeah, I could go. I also feel like I was just getting started in 7 minutes. I just hadn't got far out of the immediate. Um, so something came to mind for me very, very immediately. You mentioned that the just choose something you did this morning, because it was a sort of small thing, but I was very conscious when I did it. So that's why it came to mind. There's probably loads of other things I'd done really unconsciously, but I made a conscious decision. I was seeing counselling clients today, and I thought I also had a supervision session, but I'd got the day wrong, and so I had a gap. And then my client, that was one of my clients that was this afternoon, contacted me to say, could I see her this morning instead? And at that point, I was still a bit unsure what was going on with the supervision. But anyway, at some point in that, I made a conscious decision to be flexible and go, okay, I'll be flexible. I'm not quite sure how it's going to pan out. It's going to mean less lunch break, but more time in the afternoon. So it's going to have effects that are going to ripple, but I'm just going to be flexible. Um, and that was interesting because there was a very brief but clear decision-making process in that. I did that partly because it's good for me to practice being flexible. So I did it partly to challenge myself, and partly just to be, kind, generous, whatever. And partly because sometimes I have to ask my clients to be flexible if I need to change. So it seems fair. So it's kind of a sense that it's fair and it's kind, and also it's a bit challenging for me. I was already feeling a bit discombobulated by the supervision thing, and so there was a real conscious decision to go, okay, I'm just going to go with it, and yeah, go with it. But then it's really hard to kind of track what might have particularly come from that change of time, how that might have affected my day and the client's day. Um, I was probably more alert in the session doing it in the morning than the afternoon. She got to get a load of stuff off her chest in the morning, which probably really improved her afternoon. I was probably more tired for my client that I saw after. I hadn't had a lunch break, and so I was maybe less alert with them. So it might have been a less good session with them. It gave me more of a break in the afternoon, which meant that something I was doing after that, I was probably more alert. Um, and then this whole thing of me training myself to be more flexible, kind of like, hopefully that's like I'm trying to build the habit of being more, when I notice I don't want to be flexible, of just going, okay, let's just be flexible. If I can't think of a good reason not to be, if I can't think of a clear bad outcome, then let's be flexible. If it's, someone's asking me something of me. And then I did go into a bit about, internet, and there's the environmental impact of the internet, but then there would be environmental impact if we were traveling in person to meet. So stuff like that. But yeah, and then particularly the sense that I have no idea the longer impact into the future. It was a really intense counselling session. It could be very impactful for her in the future or not. I don't know. Good or bad, I don't know. And what difference there was from the change of time, I don't know. So there's real sense for me with there definitely are effects that resonate through time and space, but it's impossible to predict or know what they are. And it might be possible at some time in the future to track back and go, oh, look, that caused this and that caused this. But to know ahead seems really, and there's something particularly about that with counseling. Often working with, I'm thinking this now rather than writing it, I didn't write it down. Often working with clients as part of the counseling process, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that something really happened today, but we don't know where that's going to lead. We don't know where, and there's a real trust necessary that doing the work right leads to good outcomes. So there's something about that in the whole karmic field, isn't there? I'm just realizing that as I'm talking. There's something in this whole thing that just having the right intention and the right approach in this case, there's more to it than that, because there's also the using the right tools, whatever, having the right knowledge. Anyway, but there's something of you just have to do it, and then you don't know really how the right outcomes come about. There are certain predictable things in counseling that if you work in certain ways with people, a lot of the time certain benefits come, but the actual way that comes is really unpredictable. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yes. Tanya, do you want to share?
Yeah, I can.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Josh. Yeah.
So I've written, I will read it. Yeah, so today in the morning I didn't feel super well physically because of some food poisoning. And I walked a bit reciting a mantra, and then a thought came up to listen to Lama Lina's teachings. YouTube brought up the teachings on Mandarava story that I didn't come across before. I never saw them before. I've listened to two videos on Mandarava by Lama Lina, and they were full of wisdom. And gradually, I felt better physically, and I felt a wave of gratitude towards a man that I'm relating with, and his various actions of kindness and care came up to my mind. Even while I felt unwell after we've celebrated my birthday because of some food combination that uh, didn't turn out very good for me. Yet I felt lots of gratitude and tenderness for him creating a beautiful celebration for me and making the food and helping the next day and showing so much care. So I've sent him a message about it with gratitude, and I wish for care and love and tenderness between us and generally in life to grow and expand more and more. That was my action.
I like this. I like how it kind of goes back and forth through time, right?
Yeah.
And how our past actions are influencing our present, and how our present actions are influencing the future. Yeah, I had a similar experience with this, of working with just getting a glass of water. And I think a lot about the beings that we don't see. And that was the first thing that came to my mind, was stomping around my house looking for the glass, and all these little bugs that I can't even see. I'm crushing them with every step. And here I am, pouring the water, and this comes from, our sewage system, and it comes from the sky ultimately, right? And so there had to have been all of this to have happened. And then this little drink mix that I use came from a factory and got shipped to me. And, that's part of this glass of water. And then there's the immediate effect of, okay, my body is nourished, I feel more at ease. My words come more freely. But then on a mundane level, it encourages using the toilet. This human body, right? Goes in, it's got to come out. And so even though it's a lovely, we should use the plumbing available to us, there's still water waste, there's paper waste. That my toilet paper came from a factory, had to go to a store, I had to go to the store to get it. There's the environmental impact of all of that. There's the car that I drove, putting gases into the air. And then over time, I'll use up all my Gatorade powder, and then I'll order more, and then there will be some other delivery person in the sun in summer in Louisiana who has to drop this box off at my door, right? And as much as it nourishes me, there's still all of these impacts in order to make this moment happen. And more little bugs getting crushed while we walk around. And that was where my head went, was with all the little bugs. But yeah, there's these things that we can't anticipate in the moment, right? You know, I can imagine going out to dinner and getting sick from the food and feeling really negatively about that. But, you know, then how it unfolded was totally, you know, it was changed. It was, you know, impacted by your actions. Then, you know, went and sought wisdom and allowed that in, and it changed the way that you were feeling and the way that you would have acted about that. And so, you know, there is this aspect of not knowing that is really important to grasp and respect when it comes to how karma works. And I don't want to say confusion, or no, rather, I like the word confusion. I don't want to say ignorance. Ignorance is the unenlightened form of this, right? So at this base level, attraction, aversion, and ignorance play together. And once this whole field is illuminated, you know, I am no longer ignorant that every time I take a step, I'm squashing living beings. I'm aware of that. I can't turn the light off on that and just forget, you know. And so reading through the chapter and learning about the way that karma works, this is illuminating these processes to us. And so, you know, I'm no longer ignorant to the environmental impacts that I have, to the impacts of things around the people around me, how my, you know, the person that I'll be tomorrow, the person that I'll be next year, right? That's been illuminated. But there will always be this level of confusion because we can't totally know what the outcomes are and how they will impact over time. And so, you know, being again, there's a level of letting go of the result and coming back to, you know, the intent of the action. Again, you want to know your past lives, look at your present circumstances. You want to know your future lives, look at your present actions, right? So when we act, when, on a karma or create a karma, we want to make sure that we're doing it from from the heart, from Bodhicitta, all right, which is not just, it's not just niceness. It's not pity. It's not an I know better than you. It's a place of openness. Both allowing yourself to act in an open way and at the same time not grasping at a result. So the other thing that Lama Lina really wants us to understand is group karma. And this can be a tough one. So group karma, because you're not an individual. If you think you're an individual, I'm just going to pop that bubble for you right now. You're not. We exist in interdependently with other beings, within our planet, within time. And so, for example, okay, so I had a discussion with a friend of mine. He's from Romania. And we were talking about the political situation in that region of the world. There's always threats from Russia, and it's very unstable. And we were talking about group karma, and he says, no, it's not gonna affect me. And sure, he's joking, but also joking. I said, look, it doesn't matter how good your practice is. When a Russian tank rolls down your street, and they shoot at your house, they're not checking the purity of your heart. You're just a Romanian in that apartment building, right? And you have the same group karma as all the people in that building, as all the people in that nation, to experience what you're experiencing. All right, so I could look at my life and, we can, again, start small, start immediately, right? So I have the group karma of being a woman. I have the group karma of being in my family, with the last name Garza, right? All of us Garzas are all tied in together. And then I can say, I live in this house, right? And I have the same group karma of living in this house as all the beings in this house. And then I live in this neighborhood. I live in this city. I live in this state. I'm also a Dharma practitioner, right? So there's group karma that comes along with that. There's group karma of being a Tibetan Buddhist. There's group karma of being a yoga practitioner. There's group karma of being an artist, of, every single artist that works with acrylic paint will have the group karma of dealing with all of the intricacies of acrylic paint, right? That's the same struggle we're going to have to go through. So these are examples from my life. And so I'm going to pass this on to you. So here's another quote as we go into this. Chogyam Trungpa was giving a teaching, and one of his students asks, okay, so is the point then to destroy the ego? And Trungpa says, no way. I don't think he said no way. I think he said something slightly different. But he says, no. The point is to continue to put on the ego over and over and over again until, like an old shirt, it falls apart and falls off of its own accord. The point is not to say, I'm not anything, I am empty, I don't, nothing affects me, I don't affect anything, I'm just a vessel of bliss. That's not gonna happen. Maybe for a moment, and then you're human again, right? Then you're using the toilet like the rest of us. Right? So it's important to identify, or at least have an understanding of all of the ways that we are interacting and the costumes that we put on and take off and put on another one and take off this one and maybe wear half of a costume here and half of a different costume, because they all have to get exhausted, or they'll all, it's all going to have an impact at some point, right? And not to be ignorant of the fact that, there are certain circumstances that go along with these different labels, categories, identities that we that we're part of. Okay, so this next one is, again, we're going through, and I want you to label as many groups as you can think of that you're part of. And you have 7 minutes, so hopefully you can think of some ones that you wouldn't normally think about.
Sorry, so just the idea is just to list them, like just to label them?
Yeah.
What is the purpose?
We're identifying our group karmas.
So then we have to believe in it somehow. Okay.
Well, you don't. What country do you live in?
I understand your point. I'm just trying to see if I relate to it strongly or not.
You don't need to feel very strongly about it, but like I said, I don't necessarily feel like the same way about New Orleans as somebody who was born and raised here. I just moved here 6 months ago, but I'm still a resident of New Orleans, and I still carry that group karma. So whether or not you feel strongly about it, if you can identify it, let's list it. I mean, I have brown hair. Scientific studies have shown that people act a certain way and feel a certain way about people with brown hair. That
Hmm.
that affects things. Studies show that Americans tend to find people who wear glasses and have an English accent tend to see them as more trustworthy than, say, an American. Right? And so, if if Josh lands in the middle of an American city, he's going to have this group karma of having the accent and the glasses, and that will affect how he's perceived. Right? And so it can be very kind of silly and innocuous, but it is still the situation in which you find yourself. Right? And so how do we change the situation in which we find ourselves? Part of that is looking how to do something differently, right? So,
Okay.
yeah. So list them all. Any group, any identity, anything, you know. I shop at Walmart. So you're in the group karma of every. I shop at Amazon. I just talked about my Gatorade powder, right? So I'm in the group karma of everybody who orders things on Amazon, whether I like it or not, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. 7 minutes. Okay, we'll go ahead and wrap up. So I came up with quite a long list. And some things that I don't usually think about that I'm a part of, that I just kind of take into my day to day without always lumping myself into that group. The Amazon shopping was one that came up for me. It's like I do it, and I also think so many thoughts about Amazon as a company and their result, and I'm part of that. I'm still part of that, you know.
That, that that's a real big thing in our society, isn't it? Being caught in the collective karma of big corporations that we use their services. You know, that's a huge aspect of the society that we live in. It's very hard to not do that, whether we approve of what they do or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know, La Molina orders from Amazon all the time. Right? You know, it's not a wrong thing. It's just a thing, right? It's not good or bad, you know, looking at my list. It's not good or bad to be a gun owner. It just is, right? It's what do I do with the gun after that? You know, it's not good or bad to live in New Orleans or to be a Vajrayogini practitioner. It's not good or bad. It just is, right? Or any of these other, you know, I wear glasses. Sometimes I dress more feminine. Sometimes I dress more masculine. Sometimes, you know, I receive a disability check, but I also receive Dana from people, you know. Not good or bad, just groups, just labels. Anybody else have insights, observations, things of note?
I can go, but I always sort of go first because that's one of the things I'm group of. I put people who are confident talking in meetings, and like, but but Tanya, if you want to go ahead of me, you could go ahead or not.
Go for it.
But that was interesting because I started by putting people who are confident in groups, and then I went, no, I'm confident in talking in meetings, but I'm not always confident in groups. Like at parties and things, I can feel sort of out of place. So that was interesting. It got very specific. I was really thinking a bit, well, now when you were talking about some of these bigger groups, I know you're saying it's not good, it's not bad, but I think there's consequences, whether you call it good or bad. There are implications or responsibilities, or whatever, being part of a collective karma. And yeah, I mean, using those, so using Amazon or whatever is an example of that. You know, I also use Amazon, and sometimes I consciously choose not to for certain things, and sometimes I constantly, you know, there's about consciousness and knowing as much as we can the impacts. I've got like about 60 things or something, and some of them were quite random. Like I realized partway through, people who have messy handwriting, right? Like, oh yeah. And there's probably reasons, you know, wider connections. And I did think about like the collective karma of where I live. So I live in this village, Dartington, which is nearby this town, Totnes, and they have a particular history that has drawn a lot of so-called alternative types of people. There used to be an art college, and the Dartington estate was owned by these sort of bohemian types in the 20s and 30s and 40s. It's got this whole history, and so it has a particular culture of this place, and people move to this place to be part of that culture. And so there's a whole group karma there that's really interesting. Jewish was actually the first thing I put on my whole list. And then separated out different bits of my family. I'm really aware of the sort of karma of being in my father's family and the karma being in my mother's family. They're quite different. And then the particularities of the family I grew up in, and then the family I'm part of now with my two children. And then the particular little housing estate we live on, and then groups that I've been part of. So I was very involved for like 10 years in environmental activism and living with people together on the land. So there's particular groups, really strong bonds that we had that we made like 30 years ago, and we still consider each other family, you know. Like any of these people, if they phone me up and said, I need help, you know, I'd be there. And we're always like crashing on each other's floors, and that, you know, people will turn and go, oh, I'm going to be in that area, can I crash on your sofa? And there's no way we would say no unless you can't, you know. And that, I don't know, so there's something there. What else have I got? Yeah, the particularities of different Buddhist groups that I'm part of locally and bigger scale. I've got people who grew up with punk rock. That's a big part of my life. That was really kicking off a bit before I got into it, but as I grew up into a teenager, punk was still really alive as a thing, and post-punk, and that I've realized in recent years, even though how much that's impacted my life, how much that group. What else? I don't drive. People who don't drive, people who don't use aeroplanes, people who ride bicycles, particular musical instruments that I play, particular types of music that I'm into. And some of those are very interesting. There's a whole scene of Breton and French dancing. So Brittany is just across. I'm in southwest of England, so Brittany is right across the water from us. So there's quite a lot of connection culturally, historically, and English folk dancing is really tame because of the Puritans, and really literally historically, and the Breton folk dancing is very interesting and deeply rooted. And there's a whole scene of people to do that. And so at things that I do that, I will meet people that I would not meet anywhere else, and we have this collective shared thing. But we may have really different lives otherwise. So that I'm really aware of. That'll do. Yeah. Hang on a moment. I want to see if there's anything I want to reflect on. I don't know. The ones that are piquing my interest are these like really random ones. Like I said, people who have messy handwriting.
Because it does impact, right? There is an impact.
And there's
Everybody with
probably
messy
something in common.
handwriting has to work with, okay, is somebody going to be able to read what I wrote,
Yeah.
right?
But there may be like similar causes or something as well, like hidden causes. Why do we have messy handwriting? Maybe there's similarity of things on that, you know. And certain physical illnesses I didn't list them, but like chronic physical conditions, there's definitely a similarity of life experience with people with similar chronic health conditions, and yeah, and then financial things. I've had certain benefits of inherited wealth that other people don't have, and there's a commonality there, you know, that has a huge impact on one's life. If you have it or don't have it, people who own their own home, you know, that's a big divide in Britain between people who do or don't own their own home. That's a huge impact. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Tanya, did you want to share any of your experience
Yeah,
with this? Yes.
I can just read it through
Yes.
rather than reflection. I have Jewish roots. It's curious that it's the one that comes up first. Josh also mentioned that it came first. It seems like a strong group thing. I was born in Moscow. I have one Russian grandmother, which makes my actually heritage very mixed from both. I'm in a female body. I have curly hair. I wear contact lenses. I'm not very tall. I like to dance. I appreciate nature. I'm drawn to Lama Lina's teachings. I like nectarines. I like to wear things that are nice and comfortable at the same time. Right. I have nephews and nieces. I have siblings. My grandpa is 97 years of age. I wish for all beings who also wish that to be happy and well and loved and loving and safe also. I wish for all beings to experience enoughness and abundance of all that might be needed to go through life well. That was it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I like this identifying your Dharma practice, because that is ultimately kind of what we're going for here as we move forward. In words of my perfect teacher, is how do we, so now that we know where we are and where we come from, I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning to relax our craving and aversion for gain and loss, fame and blame. There's two other categories of worldly ambitions, right? And to identify with the practice, right? And to take refuge, do the practice without conceptualization, and then dedicate the merit to all beings. It's so simple. It's so simple, but it's so hard because we come in with all of these labels, right? All of these labels, all of these categories, all of these past actions. These are our past lives, right? I also had a past life as a punk kid, in Philadelphia, making those actions, right? And have seen the impact of those actions as my life has continued. But back to Guru Rinpoche. Where the point is not to work on each of these identities individually, right? Because then we get into this like a false victory, to say I no longer am, I'm not that punk kid anymore. I'm not doing that anymore. I don't identify with that anymore. So I'm just going to throw that away. But the impact is still here, right? I can still see the echoes. It's not about chopping things off, pushing them away, running from them. If it arises, it arises. But the point is moving forward. What are your present actions? Even identifying with the Dharma practice, Lama Lena would tell you, is still a little bit of a false victory, because she ultimately wants to lead us beyond that, even beyond the construct of the Buddha Dharma. But that's, a few steps afterwards of my perfect teacher, and we're just working on these first concepts now. And it's important to understand, where are we coming from? Where do we find ourselves? If you think about this concept of the mandala, and you have and you arise in the center of the mandala of your yidam, you also arise at the center of your own mandala And you have all these mandalas all stacked on top of each other, right? And so it creates a shape, it creates a landscape around you. But how do we move forward? Is our Dharma practice, essentially, right? So, okay, again, we're getting long. Okay, so we're gonna, so let's sum it up. Again, this chapter was not designed to give you clarity about karma. If you want to know the ins and outs and how the particulars work, there are courses of study that you can take. But what we're doing is understanding that there is a great deal, there are a great deal of circumstances that led to this moment, and the way that you change the outcome is what you decide to do in this moment. And so we've got a lot of how we got here, a little bit of where we're going, right? You can see, okay, so I identify, I live in New Orleans. I can see the future of New Orleans to some degree, right? And yes, my life will continue to be impacted by that. But, what does my future circumstance look like? Whether, it depends on my Dharma practice. So let's take another 7 minutes and sum it up for ourselves. Where we're coming from, where we're going, and how we want to get there. Okay, and go. All right, that's 7 minutes. So, okay. Is there anybody who'd like to share what they wrote for today about karma? I'd like to share. So, okay. Jasmine is a plant that's very fragrant with beautiful flowers, generally pleasant. Beggar's tick is a weed that nobody really likes with stickers that come and get stuck on you and poke you. Okay. Thunder after the lightning. I do not fear the crash or flash. It is simply the storm. It is simply passing. My refuge is impenetrable. My heart opens as the jasmine drinks, as the beggar's tick drinks. It also just started raining as we were writing today, so that was beautiful inspiration. Would either of you like to share what you wrote for today? It's okay, no. Yeah, again, you know, ultimately, this is for you. This is for you to examine your own understanding and how these oh, Tanya, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I actually, I can share that. I thought Josh also wanted to share
Oh,
it.
oh, go ahead, Tanya. Thank you.
I might be wrong, but I think he also wanted to. So my share is not coming and not going. Things unfold, relaxing the channels, expanding the view, applying an effort when needed to, letting things be the way they are, letting karmas be the way they are. Nirvana and samsara are intermingled right now. Breathe as long as the breath comes and goes, and dive beyond afterwards.
Thank you. Thank you. I got chills. It's beautiful. Thank you. Yes, yes, exactly that. Exactly that. You know, ultimately, this is about relaxing into things the way that they are. You know, Lama Lena tells us again and again just to relax, let go, leave be. And no, go ahead.
Well, just that's interesting because we're talking about karma, which is action.
Mm-hmm.
And relax, let go, leave be. My thought is like, because of the topic, relax, let go, leave be, then what? And I guess part of what Lama Lena teaches, you know, is she says, you know, you can't do sopa on purpose. You know, it's relax, let go, leave be, and then allow action to come, something.
No.
And I forgot today
Relax
when you
again.
said summit. I forgot to say when you said sum it up that we normally sum it up in a kind of poem, and I actually wrote loads more again. So I'm gonna like write something after. I was really taken by this theme of like, you know, where am I? Where have I come from? Where am I wanting to go? And what am I doing in order to get where I want to go? And I ended up just like writing a log blurb and forgot that we were making it into a poem. So
well, if you'd
I'll
like
do
to
it
share
after.
what you wrote, that's great.
No, it's just loads. It's loads again. Although I made a sort of summary and notice at the end that I noticed that kind of what I'm trying to achieve, what I want from my life, there's quite a lot of it. And I'm like, I'm not that young anymore. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not doing all of that. You know, so there's a giving up and a trust in that. You know, like I'm just putting myself into the world. And a lot of what I do is that, like the counselling I was saying before, you know, you just turning up and putting in what I can, and hoping and trusting that contribution helps, and I do quite a lot of that, but there is more that I want to do, and conscious from the list of my groups and things, conscious of when I think about where I've come from, that I have a lot of privilege. I do have a lot of privilege, and that makes me feel even more responsible to what I was just saying, to turn up and try and be of benefit, to make use of that privilege. Yeah.
Yes. And again, we have a precious human life. We have a full human opportunity. That is really, like, I really want you to think about that a lot. That not only do we collectively, and not just us here today, but the people listening in the future to this, we have the karma to be Dharma practitioners. And if these words right now are your very first introduction to the Dharma, it's that you have the karma to be introduced to and choose to practice the Dharma. And so what does this give you? It gives you the illumination and the practices that are proven to lead to openness, to lead to further relaxation, letting go, leaving be. Right. And so there are multiple ways to do that. But, as we move forward with our one so very precious life, to be careful about, to be mindful, to be intentional about our actions. Because there really is no way to control the outcome of anything you do. For example, I don't know how many bugs or small animals that I have saved from disaster. Pulled a bug out of the pool, and then 20 minutes later, somebody steps on the bug. We don't know. We can't know. But if we're not already fully enlightened, to know that we can take refuge, that we can do a Dharma practice that creates incredible amounts of gewa, incredible amounts of openness, and then put that back in the pot. And that will shift our experience. It will shift the outcome over time. It doesn't always happen immediately, but to have faith that this is happening. So, again, there's no real definitive answers here, but I hope that what we got out of this is a further investigation, like a greater understanding of where you're coming from. What are your past lives that have led you to this present circumstance with your very precious full human opportunity? And then where will you take it from there? This is how we change our karma. This is how we work with karma. Okay, so we're going to wrap up for today. So let's go ahead and do that last piece of magic and dedicate the merit. So Again, come back. We're back in this extraordinary mandala that we created for ourselves at the beginning of the session, right? Wisdom being in our heart, surrounded by all sentient beings. And we release them back to where they came from. We recognize all the benefit that we gathered from this, whether it be a deeper understanding of your Dharma practice or just a good time with friends, or whatever benefit it was. And as we dedicate this, we send that out as far out as you can imagine, spreading it through space and time. Gewadi nur dudak Chechi sala Goparsho. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.